Hello everyone, welcome! The topic for today is another highly requested one, and that is: what are boundaries? It can be quite difficult to explain what boundaries are. The truth is that all of us have boundaries, whether we realize it or not. Today we are going to take a closer look at our boundaries and how they influence our lives. Boundaries are almost like a set of rules or guidelines you have that navigate what behavior is acceptable and what behavior is not. For example, for most people it would be unacceptable if you entered the bathroom while they are using it. That is why we close and lock the bathroom door. This is a physical boundary. Our personal boundaries teach others how to treat us. For example, if you allow a co-worker to shout at you, you teach others that to a certain extent it is okay for them to shout at you. You might wonder why people always treat you a certain way, without realizing that the problem might lie with your boundaries or lack thereof. You see, a boundary is not there for the other person. You set a boundary for yourself. A boundary is put in place to protect yourself and not to control the behavior of the other person. A boundary is thus like the burglar bars of a house. The burglar bars are there to keep the occupants of the house safe and not for the people outside. You might wonder, well, who needs boundaries? You might think that just those people who are affected by addiction or abuse needs boundaries. Truthfully, all of us need boundaries. Having good, proper boundaries will ensure that you live a balanced and healthy life. Because you respect yourself, others are more likely to also treat you in a respectful way. More so, having clear personal boundaries will guide and protect you. For example, if you are in recovery and your boundary is to avoid places known for drinking, sticking to this boundary can protect you from relapsing. Next, you might wonder, but how do I set up good boundaries? First, you need to find a quiet, peaceful place. In a reflective manner, you need to make a list of your boundaries. These could be obvious, like no one is allowed to hit me, or not so obvious at all, like I prefer handshakes rather than hugs. It is recommended that you set up boundaries while you are calm. Your next step would be to communicate your boundaries in a clear way. Talk to those you would like to set boundaries for. Make sure that they understand what you mean and why the boundary is important to you. For example, tell your co-workers that you would prefer a handshake rather than a hug because you feel uncomfortable with hugs. Sometimes people might get upset with you for setting boundaries. However, you are allowed to set boundaries to protect yourself and should not allow others to manipulate you into compromising on your boundaries. That brings us to the next step, and that is that you must always be consistent with your boundaries. Some people might try and get you to give in, maybe because they benefited from you not having boundaries. For example, maybe you have a family member who is struggling with addiction. They always used to borrow money from you, but now you set up a boundary of not borrowing them money anymore. They might get angry at you and try to make you feel guilty. However, you must consistently stick with your boundary and not give them money. If you give in, your boundary carries no power and this person will not take your boundaries seriously anymore. A good boundary also has a consequence. For example, perhaps the boundary at home is that everybody must be home by 10. If you're not home by 10, the door gets locked and you need to go sleep outside or go back to where you came from. It is important to note that the consequence and boundary must be age appropriate and realistic. You can lock an adult out, but it would be unrealistic to have the same consequence for a minor. Their consequence could be different, like getting grounded. A boundary without a consequence also has no power and is just a threat. It is important to note that a boundary is different from a threat, as a threat is sometimes made from a place of anger and fear. Boundaries, on the other hand, are set up from a place of calmness before a crisis situation takes place. During a crisis situation, for example, maybe that family members you set a boundary for not borrowing money steals money from you. It is normal to become angry and frustrated during such a situation. However, many times when we react out of anger, we say and do things we later regret. So before you react, stop. Take a breath. Think of a traffic light. Imagine that you are at the red light. Stop, calm yourself down, leave the room if you have to. Next, think of the yellow light. Proceed with caution. Test your thoughts and make sure that the action you take next will be helpful. Do not rush to make a decision. Only move ahead when you are ready. Next, think of the green light. When you are certain of the steps you want to take, implement your decision. This could mean reporting the theft to the police. This may seem harsh, but allowing the consequence of your boundary to happen will protect both you and the family member in the long run. Setting up boundaries can be quite challenging. You might experience a wide range of emotions. Therefore, it is important to seek support from family and friends, or even in the form of therapy. It is normal to struggle with setting up boundaries at first. Always communicate your boundaries clearly and do not be afraid to speak up if something is bothering you. However, remember that boundaries are there to protect you and not to control the other person. Hence why another important step in setting up boundaries is letting go. This means that people will not always respect your boundaries, and in cases like this, it would mean allowing the consequences of your boundaries to happen. Like the example of earlier with your family member, maybe they get in trouble, maybe they need to go to jail, but through letting that consequence happen, you maybe protect them from engaging in more theft and getting in deeper trouble. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you want more content like this. Until next time, bye bye!